Welcome, everybody. This is Crowdfunding Your Comic, the before, during, and after the campaign. This is presented by Global Comics. We have an amazing panel here, and I'm not going to do them a disservice. I'm going to allow each of them to introduce themselves. So if you would say your name, your experience in comics and crowdfunding and anything that you think is worth sharing comes to mind. And why don't we start with you, Rylend?
How you guys doing? My name is Rylend Grant. I for about 15 years have been a working screenwriter in Hollywood. I've written for JJ Abrams and Ridley Scott and Luc Beson and John Woo and a bunch of fun people like that. I swerved into the comic book lane a few years back. My first book was released by Action Lab Danger Zone. It was called Aberrant. It won a Ringo Award for Best Villain in 2019, was nominated for a couple others. My last traditionally published book was called Banjax. It's a kind of a dark superhero noir that was nominated for 4 Ringo Awards last year, including a Best Series alongside Bitterroot and a bunch of other cool books. But yeah, COVID hit and the whole landscape changed, and I finally decided to try crowdfunding, and it has been wonderful to me. I highly recommend it. It has helped me get a couple of books off the ground. My first was an astral projection thriller called The Jump, which I kickstarted about 6 months ago, raised about $15,000 on issue 1. And issue 2 will be launching via Kickstarter in a couple of weeks. And then my second book, my last Kickstarter book, was called The Peacekeepers. It is a Fargo-esque, quirky crime drama. And yeah, we raised about $15,000 on the first issue of this also.
Cool. Amazing. Honor, why don't you go next?
Sure, gotta follow that. My name is Honor, longtime comic reader, first time writer. My first volume of my comic Andraste was funded on Kickstarter earlier this year. It is a historical fantasy about the Roman invasion of Britannia in the 1st century AD, very bloody, lots of fun. I was very happy with how our campaign went, very surprised with how well it went as a first timer. Thanks very much to Oriana for her help, and just Kickstarter in general for being a wonderful platform. I think very friendly to people sort of trying to break in to the industry right now. Other than comics, I write poetry and short stories. That was kind of my main thing before this, but I am now working on the second arc of this series now that the first arc is done, and a new series that will hopefully be launching later this year with one of the artists on this book.
Very cool.
Adam, love to hear from you.
My name's Adam Lawson. I'm also a television showrunner, pretty much like Ryan. I come from that world, and like him, I had COVID hit, and I'd been doing comics on my own time, and said, you know, I'm going to launch them now. And I work in board games and comics. That's my side passion, so I do both. And I've had some great experiences on both Kickstarter and Indiegogo with them. I did 2 campaigns this last year. One was called The 8th, and another one was called Kill Journal. The first one, after the backer kit haul, did a little over 40,000, and the second one like around 26,000. And then it was very exciting to see the response from people, and that it could be a reality, and you could have a story and not have to then pitch it to Netflix and get them to buy it, and then you get to make it, but that you could have an idea and you could present it to an audience and they could greenlight it, which is even more exciting.
Excellent. Oriana, love to hear from you.
Hi, I'm Oriana. I'm the Director of Publishing and Comics Outreach at Kickstarter. Everybody's holding up books. I did write a book, although I didn't kickstart it. Knock everything down on my shelves. I wrote a book a few years ago about underground art spaces across Brooklyn. It's called Brooklyn Spaces. That was terrible. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And last, but definitely not least, Kamal.
Hello, folks. My name is Kamal Hennessy. I am a comic book attorney and business consultant. I am also the general counsel for Global Comics as a whole. And I have, my experience with Kickstarter is very close to comics, but it's not comics, because I actually wrote a book called The Business of Independent Comic Book Publishing, which is actually explains the entire process, the entire industry of comics, from the time you want to get you are inspired to make a comic to the time that you have a thriving business with a whole catalog of different books that you have on an ongoing basis. I originally had chapters in the book about crowdfunding and Kickstarter, but I wasn't planning on doing a Kickstarter until, like everybody else said, COVID hit. And then I had realized I had to do some other thing to actually get the book out. And the experience was actually better than it probably would have been if I released it on my own, because I was planning on doing a very big push at a convention. But to actually sell as many copies as I did and have to ship those copies and set up a table and do all that other kind of stuff would have probably destroyed me mentally. But doing it through Kickstarter was a very much smoother process. And it also allowed me to secure a literary agent, because like Rylend said, you get exposed in such a way that instead of you having to go to an agent and then get a publisher and then get the book out, almost goes in reverse. You get a book out and then an agent contacts you and then you go get a bigger publisher. You just get a bigger deal because you have that you've already proven you have an audience. So instead of, you have much more leverage in terms of negotiating what your deal is going to be. And I put the book up here because I don't really like holding it up and lifting it down because I'm lazy. So I just put it up there and it stays up there all day. And that's it.
Excellent. Well, it's great to have all of you here. And Kamal, that is an amazing segue to the first question. This panel is going to talk about, we're going to try to hit on the before, the during, and the after of a campaign to try to touch all the areas. We're going to try to go in depth, but really try to cover as much, width as possible. And if we start at the beginning, how do you decide whether or not to run a crowdfunding campaign? What goes into that decision? And
well, I think the first thing you have to understand about crowdfunding is the magic of the process is in the name. If you don't have a crowd, you are not going to get any funding. If you do have a crowd, it is much easier for that whole momentum to take hold, because the way Kickstarter actually works is something that you have to drive traffic to your project. So people have to already be excited about what it is that you're doing. So the first choice that you have to make, if you know you're going to do Kickstarters or you're going to do crowdfunding, and that's going to be your distribution model, is to build the market long before you press that button to launch the campaign. So whether it's 6 months, 8 months, even a year of just getting people excited, then launch the campaign, that's one of the major things you need to do. The other thing is you have to have a certain amount of book already made to launch a Kickstarter. You can't just go on the Kickstarter and say, I have a cool idea, give me money. People need to see who the team is. People need to see the artwork. People need to understand what the story is and how that impacts them. And then you can actually get the crowd to then get the funding, and Bob's your uncle.
Would anybody like to add on to that, or contrast that in any way?
Yeah, I think you're couldn't be more right about developing a crowd first. When I launched the 8th, I had no real crowd and no real presence. And I ended up spending a good chunk of money on Facebook ads while I was doing the process and learning how to build a crowd. And I think about, it feels like there's these 3 components, right? But one thing I did have, so I would say going for the 8th, is I had 5 of the 8 issues done and paid for out of my own pocket. So I had a lot of content. So I could get proper journalist reviews because I could send them issue 1. I could go on streams with people and talk about it because I had something to show. And that was really meaningful. And so, albeit, Kamal, you're right, I blew it and didn't have a crowd first, and then ended up kind of paying for a crowd through ads and hustling every day and asking my celebrity friends to help give me boosts, et cetera. And it really worked out. But the value of having a big enough amount of material that you can submit it for other people to read and review and give feedback on, it changes it dramatically on how much traction you can build especially when you're a first timer, because it's hard for people to know if you're going to come through, or you're going to take a year and a half to deliver this to them. You know, it really says a lot. So that I can't overstate how important it is to have work done.
Yeah, as a first timer, that was something I was trying to be really sensitive to, was nobody knows who I am. I mean, to my friends and family, I'd been talking about this book for like 3 years. So that was great because they were sick of it and they were very ready to here, let me buy it so you'll stop. But yeah, having a lot of artwork ready to go and there for the campaign page is so important. I think figuring out, right, how many issues do I need to have so I can really focus on running this Kickstarter rather than also writing and editing and doing all of that work was important to me too, right? So I didn't want to be starting the Kickstarter at issue 2, even if I thought I could have swung it, because my attention would have been totally divided. And yeah, I mean, even with all of that said, I always say add like a month and a half to your most conservative estimates on like how long something's going to take when you're starting out, because there's always unexpected stuff. But yeah, I think starting off with that critical mass of, you have a few people who will back you right away and get you rolling. That can come from your friends and family, that can come from social media, that can come from, right, having sent your book around to journalists and having that fan base already, but it has to come from somewhere. You can't totally start from scratch.
Yeah, I mean, you guys said it, right? Nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd. I mean, I think early success is key. You need your people to show up on the first day, the first couple of hours, the first 2 days at the very least. And I think, I mean, the beauty of Kickstarter is, I would say like 80% of my backers came from within the Kickstarter, world. I mean, Kickstarter does a lot of internal promotion, right? I mean, you all see it. If you back a Kickstarter project and then you get an email from Kickstarter, they'll put 3 more projects down there. Hey, you like this? You might like this, this, or this. I mean, Oriana can maybe correct me on this if I'm wrong, but it seems to me, and it is rumored that they promote the more the hotter projects. You know what I'm saying? If people seem to like this project, then the Kickstarter algorithm says, oh well, this is something people are going to be interested in, so let's show them that one. If you have fallen on your face in those first 2 days, I think you are unlikely to get that internal promotion, and I think that can kind of kill a project pretty quickly. You kind of have to meet Kickstarter halfway. I mean, and if you everything that you put in, you will get back twofold. I think that is the beauty of the ecosystem there. I think that's awesome. In my experience, I think a plan is the most important part. You guys have kind of, you guys have kind of said this, but let me hit it right on the head. I mean, the people who fail with their Kickstarters, they have the Napoleon plan at Waterloo: show up, see what happens, right? How did that work out for him? It's not going to work out for you either. You need to prepare for your Kickstarter campaign like you are a coach preparing for the Super Bowl. Script out your first 15 plays. Imagine situational football. When you hit that lull in the middle of your campaign, what are you going to do? Your Facebook ads. Who are the people you're going to call on to sing your praises? All of those things I think are key. Like, have your playbook set and be ready to run it and be prepared for anything. And then, just let me echo, I would not in a million years start a Kickstarter campaign without having the actual product done. I've seen people do it, and I've seen people, fall on their face, artists bow out or whatever. You need to know that you can deliver that book, deliver that comic book. And there's so much that goes into fulfilling the printing, the packaging, all of that stuff. It is so much work. You do not want to be worried about also getting the book done. So get everything done before you start. When you are done, when your playbook is together, then start the campaign, not before. That's key. Yeah, and the other key part, and I think you touched on it, I'm just going to run with your football analogies. You have to have, the team has to be put together. Like when I spent about a year and a half building up the crowd for this book among the comic book creator community. But even then, I went out and I found
someone's going to write the forward who I knew had the type of social media following that when he put his name on it, the amount of backers would jump up. I brought in a publicist who specialized in Kickstarter campaigns, and that's where a lot of that media attention, because I didn't have like a whole list of celebrities in my contacts like Adam did, so I had to call somebody else who had that list to like use that to kind of leverage things. And like you said, they all kind of made that major push in the first 2 days, so that then it became a project that we love. And then like you said, the algorithm kicked in, and after that, you're just kind of executing your plan. All of the the updates that you wrote in advance, all the Twitter posts that you wrote in advance, you have to leave a certain amount of flexibility to deal with situations that you may not have anticipated. But if you've scheduled it at the right time, so you're not running into like a holiday or a major convention or anything like that, then you execute the plan, you adjust with what's happened, and let your team do it, so you're not doing everything on your own, and you're much closer to getting success that way.
No,
I think so, and I think that's. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Rylend.
No. Go ahead, Adam. You go ahead. Yeah.
I know. I would say, and one of the things that's really key to adjust along the way is stretch goals. I had this false idea that it's great to like put all your stretch goals out up front, because there's a narrative in the stretch goals being broken. This last campaign I did called Asunder on Kickstarter, I was able to really, set the stretch goal number at a number that could be achieved. So there could be emotional payoff for the backer. They'd be like, yeah, we broke through that something, versus dropping goals that might be too far out or too close. And so there's something nice about that, about, maybe having step 1 or 2 available there for your backers to see, but to be able to be really organic with it, that really makes a difference in being able to like help build the emotional arc of this 30-day journey you're on. Because in a way, it's very much like a roller coaster, and you're completing this narrative with your updates and et cetera. And if, first of all, if you're backing, if you want to do a campaign, back at least 10 yourself first. Get to see what people are throwing at you first off. But there's this ride that's fun about being a backer. And I think that ignoring that fun ride of being the backer and how to help it be fun for the people back it is a real disservice. Because let's be honest, a crowdfunding comic book is significantly more expensive than one you buy at your LCS. It's more expensive. It's longer to get to you. The incentive is that you can't get it anywhere else, and there's a ride. So give them a ride if you can.
Yeah, and let me reiterate this. Kamal, that was a really good point, that this is a team sport. It's a team sport in a number of ways. I mean, looking at it from a different angle, I found this in comics in general. Is that we all either kind of we either succeed or fail together as creators, right? I have been helped along my entire career by other creators. Gotten jobs and gotten into publishers because other creators have helped me, and they helped me because I helped them. The way I operate in comics is that if a door opens for me, I try to jam 12 of my friends through it before it closes, right? And my friends do the same for me. And when you're running a campaign, Adam, for me, the Facebook ads didn't work. And a lot of comic projects, the Facebook ads just don't move the needle. What really moves the needle for me, what I see immediate success with, is if another creator who is running a successful Kickstarter promotes you. And the funny thing is, this is the first time that Honor and I have kind of met, face to face, but we did this for each other when we were running our campaigns around the same time. You were running yours and I was running Peacekeepers, I think, and I just saw that she was working hard. I saw that I recognized her as a fellow traveler, and I hit her up and I said, hey, I like your campaign. I like the way you're moving and shaking here. How about we prop each other up? And we exchanged mentions and updates. Said, hey, this is a campaign I back. This is a great book. You should check it out. And then suddenly you got 4 or 5 people coming over from Honor's campaign onto mine, and vice versa. If you do that 30 times over the course of a campaign, it makes a huge difference. right? Again, this is an ecosystem, and it kind of feeds itself. And so, you know, I think the thing you need to do is you need to go in, see who else is playing on the field, and make, you know, make your allies. You know, keep those people close who are you know, who are fighting a good fight, and fight alongside them. Just, you know, help them as much as possible, and they'll help you. You know, again, Kickstarter is a place where whatever you put in, you get twice that back. And so just keep putting in.
If I could just, you know, if we could concretize some of that, because these are all such amazing things, what are some concrete materials or things that you need to prep in addition to your work when coming into a crowdfunding campaign?
Honor, I think you should actually respond to this question.
I have a lot of thoughts on this. My biggest one is a budget, an exhaustive budget. It seems boring, and it's a hat that maybe you don't want to wear as a writer or a creator, but it is so important before you get started, before you you know, write any of your copy or anything like that, to know exactly what everything's going to cost you, then add 10% to it, and figure out, okay, when is this going to start making me money? Am I doing, you know, my shipping tiers correctly? All of those little details will help you then focus on the really important parts of a Kickstarter campaign as it's running, which I think Adam and Rylend have touched on, which are, you know, building a community around you, finding other creators, sharing things with your backers, and being kind of available as a human to them. Get as much of the business stuff done up front as you possibly can. And I think too, if you can source your all of your things before you get started, you know, not everybody is able to put together the whole book and print it before they have their Kickstarter campaign done. But, you know, get some poster prints done at the printer that you're looking at, so you have a sense of how long they take. Print, you know, if you're doing stickers, if you're doing original artwork, anything like that, have sort of all of those timelines mapped out, make sure that the quality is like up to scratch, and have sort of a sample kit, if we're in retail, that you can look at and pick from. I think getting all of that sort of out of the way and out of your head will only help you market and be really good while everything is running.
Before we get too deep into that, to now take that and to move into more of the campaign as it's happening. Believe it or not, we're already, you know, 25 minutes in. How do you move past, how do you go from there, and how do you move past monetizing the friendships and the familial relationships? And how do you get to some of the larger monies that are, you know, available to comic creators? I know we touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to hear more. Oriana, is there, and not to put you on the spot, is there anything that comes to mind that you've seen with particularly successful campaigns?
Yeah, I think that when you're going into it, you want to have all of the information, all of the people have said so far has been really, really key. Making your budget, figuring out like what you need. You also need to think about what you can get. When, you know, something like 5 to 10% of the people who see your campaign are going to back it. And so if you have like budgeted out this like really exciting and ambitious project, and you need $50,000 to make it, but the number of people in your, you know, on your mailing list is more like in the hundreds, then you need to think about what, you know, whether your ambition matches what's possible. So as far as getting beyond, I did want to share, this is one of my like kind of favorite statistics about Kickstarter. There's a big gap between people who take their campaign seriously and who don't. There's kind of a lot of people on the platform who sort of like derp out a little campaign and just wait to be showered with magical internet money. And they don't really do very well. So if you look at all of the campaigns in kind of Kickstarter history, the success rate for running a Kickstarter is about like 38%, which seems so low. But then if you only look at projects that have at least 25 backers, the success rate leaps up. It's like 80%. So really 25 backers is like it's a little more than these familial, your kind of inner circle. My uncle called it like the bar mitzvah crowd, the people who sort of like have to back your campaign. Like if you have made a plan to get beyond that, even by a little bit, your chances of success are really high. I don't think it's super wise to run these campaigns like really aspirationally, like thinking that, you're going to make 6 figures on your first project. But thinking about how, what's your inner circle? What's the next level beyond that? How are you reaching those people? Do you have a newsletter? Individual emails are by far the highest conversion rate. We were talking, Rylend was talking before about Facebook ads. We see really mixed success with that. Certainly you could try hiring like a marketing firm if you're trying to go like way beyond. But I think it's much smarter to focus on like the people who how to touch, or the signal boosters and the amplifiers in your community. So once you've exhausted your own circle, no matter how, sort of influencer you are, your own circle is finite. So think about who who's got adjacent audiences who can, amplify an element of your campaign, the campaign itself, one of your contributors, things like this. You can also think about trying to get press, going on someone's podcast. I've seen similar to the sort of like co-promoting campaigns. I saw a campaign in the fall where 4 people who had live campaigns at the same time did a live drawing event together. Like, it was a Zoom event because COVID, but, like bringing all of their audiences to a thing and then like really, really promoting one another. So think about ways that you can amplify beyond the, what's immediately available to you. There are a lot of paths for that.
Yeah, I think one of the things that everyone running crowdfunding now has to understand, and this is a benefit, is that there's a lot of different, when we say press or we say get like amplifiers, there are so many YouTube channels and podcasts and media outlets that are specifically related to comics and specifically related to indie comics, and even more specifically related to crowdfunding indie comics. They are some of these news outlets, the only content they run is that they promote Kickstarters and they get their word out to the very type of reader that all of us are actually looking for. So if you're talking about getting past your own circle and getting past the crowd that you built up, whether you built it up through Facebook groups or through Twitter or Instagram, reach out to those people who already have a group of people. And if you can tap into a portion of each one of those groups, every podcast audience, every YouTube channel audience, that will get you far past the 25 people you need, that threshold where your percentage chance of success jumps much higher.
I think that, maybe to piggyback on this is that, you started crowdfunding comics because it was fun to tell your story. But then what you really realize is you're actually a publisher, is what you truly are, and publishers spend about this much of their time creating content and this much of their time marketing it and fulfilling it. And so I think the acceptance early on, like I think when I first hit the campaign was like, my first campaign was like, oh, hey, I've got to do an insane amount of work. Like I have to do at least part-time job, 20 hours a week level work to take this to where I want to go. And so I think when we talk about these influencers and amplifiers, to realize that that's really what it is. It's, it's building your own bad press release and sending it out to people. It's trolling YouTube every day and emailing every YouTube channel. This is what I did literally. I'd troll YouTube channels. Oh, they mentioned comics in their channel. Send them an email. And then YouTube kicks you out after a certain point. And then you'd go on Instagram and you'd find people that like stuff that you like in comic books people, and you'd follow people and reach out to them. And you would be hitting every front between Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube and Facebook every day for multiple hours every morning. I would buy press. You can buy through these various sources, you can buy emails of journalists. And so I would get lists of like 250 journalists, and I would email all of them and saying, I have this really great thing, please. But it was that every day, and then following up and making sure that podcast that took me like 8 emails to get, I was there for it and I had something hopefully witty to say. And but that's, I think the engine I think you want to put your brain in is like, and I think you guys have been communicating before too, but those are like the real methods of doing it. It's kind of like gumshoe work of you just like banging out like how can I get connected to somebody who has another voice outside of my own? And then reaching out, literally, it's multiple hours every day.
Yeah.
And
Tiny quick thing, as a former journalist, you can find journalists in a slightly more authentic way than buying their email addresses in big batches. But that too is like the same kind of sleuthery, right? Like if your comic is, Gothic fantasy, you can find journalists who have written about Gothic fantasy art or novels or like other things like that. Like you'll do much better. It's really quantity over or quality over quantity. If you can find 10 journalists who like really are probably going to be interested in what you're working on, that will likely get you a better outcome than blasting it out to 100 and hoping that like 5 of them care.
Well,
I think you've just tapped into, and this is just a segue to the other webinars that we've done about marketing and pitching your story specifically to the crowd that actually likes that type of story. So we could probably put the link in the show notes to link us to the other webinar, because all of this stuff kind of goes together.
The good news is that these people need you also. You need them, but they need you. This is an ecosystem. Comics is an ecosystem. Crowdfunding is an ecosystem. You're talking about a person who does a podcast about comics or crowdfunding or whatever. That podcast does not come out that week unless they have a guest, right? They do not hold on to their listeners unless they give their listeners content. So they need you as much as you need them. So if you can come to them with a quality piece of material and a quality pitch, hey, this is what I'm selling, this is who I am, this is how I want to be an asset to your show, it's going to be a no-brainer. It's not that difficult. It does require effort and time, and like Oriana pointed out, make sure you're going to the right people and all of that stuff. But this can be easy if you do it right and you put thought into it and you make a plan of it. And really what I think we're all talking about is, okay, so the question was, how do you get past your inner circle? It is really about finding allies, whether it's other creators, podcasters, the whole 9 yards, and making their allies your allies and making your allies their allies. Because here's the thing is, as a creator, I have a following, right? And if I go on this podcast, I'm going to tweet about it. I'm going to Instagram about it. I'm going to bring my followers to this podcast. They're gonna watch that episode at the very least. And if it's a great show, they might be like, hey, I found my new show, I'm gonna listen to this every week. Again, it's an ecosystem. It all feeds itself. I am bringing something to this podcast, and the podcast is bringing something to me, and this is how it works, is you amplify each other and it builds out. So suddenly one inner circle becomes 10 inner circles, becomes 20 inner circles. And again, we all succeed or we all fail together. So find allies.
Eric, we're actually at the 35 mark. Do we want to start opening up for questions?
Yeah, I think, the learning here is that there's a lot to talk about and there's so much to go, but I think that it would be best to let the questions lead the rest of the discussion. So, if there are any questions, Adam, it looks like you have one that you're ready to answer. If you want to start us off with starting to open up for the Q&A.
Oh, sure. So the question I tried to answer was, Indiegogo versus Kickstarter. And obviously we have a great Kickstarter rep here. Kickstarter is wonderful and Indiegogo are wonderful. And they both offer benefits. One thing that is lovely about Indiegogo is they charge people right as they back your book. And you can have this thing called in demand, which if you're successful, essentially your store stays open and people can continue to back it. You can continue to drive people there for months and months afterwards. So that's really handy and wonderful. And it prevents that moment that happens right at the end of Kickstarters when they charge cards and people get declined and there's that little moment of depression. So that's the strength of Indiegogo from a mechanic standpoint. The benefit of Kickstarter, I think you have a much stronger community there and people are looking to help each other maybe a little more, and there's more people on it. And so that was my experience between the two. And I think there's probably a good marriage between them. And also too, our backers who felt like, hey, no, like I don't want to have 7 platforms to be searching. And that's understandable. There's so many to search through. And so they kind of stuck to their own place, and you could kind of get at them both ways. So that's my experience with it. Maybe the Indiegogo for the back end felt more effective, and then the other had a bigger crowd.
Does anyone have anything to add, or is there a particular question that's hopping out?
I'll just add one thing to that, which is that, obviously Kickstarter is all or nothing and Indiegogo is not. Kickstarter is also only for creative work and Indiegogo is not. So both of those, and I absolutely think that everyone should find the platform that's right for them. This is not to say that Kickstarter is right for everyone, because it isn't. But some people will get scared off by the all or nothing funding, but I do just want to say in defense of that, there's kind of 2 reasons why we do it that way. The first is that we want people to come with a realistic understanding of their budget, and know that, if you need 10 grand to make this thing come true, you should get 10 grand, or you should wait or do a different project. If you say that you're going to do this thing and you only raise 7, now you're in a position where you're either going to give your backers an inferior product, or possibly not even be able to fulfill the promises you made at all. So that's kind of why we look at it that way, as like really critical. And because of the sort of tangible urgency of an all or nothing campaign, it really can help propel many creators like to and beyond their goal. Whereas a sort of open-ended, like, oh, give if you can, when you can, is not as compelling to backers. So just wanted to mention.
Great point.
Yeah, and to that point, I think, Oriana, one of the magics of Kickstarter is at the last day, there is really a tremendous amount of momentum that occurs because of that, like the door closes feeling. And I second that's a special thing that happens there for sure.
Yeah, I think the main thing, especially doing research on all the different platforms, is that Kickstarter there's a sense of urgency. And as writers and creators of stories, you understand how much a sense of urgency adds to the narrative. So if you're doing a Kickstarter campaign, you're actually telling people, get it now, or you may not be able to get it at all. Whereas Indiegogo is, well, you can get it whenever you want it, so don't worry about it. It's kind of just basically having that kind of ongoing opportunity. So if you're trying to create a powerful story, I think Kickstarter is the way to actually get that interest up very high, very quickly, because you have a limited amount of time to make things happen.
And one other thing actually about, Adam also mentioned this about the community on Kickstarter versus Indiegogo. I think that there are almost certainly more people going to Indiegogo overall, but it's kind of the same as the quality over quantity. In comics in particular, comics currently has the highest success rate of any category on Kickstarter right now. 2020, despite all of its darkness and toxicity, was Kickstarter Comics' best year ever by $10 million. So there are a ton of people on Kickstarter caring about comics, whereas I think that there are a ton of people on Indiegogo caring about gadgets. So some of them will be like, oh, and this is a cool comic. And, I'm just trying to these are sort of the differences, like the Kickstarter comics, the community is really there right now.
Okay, Eric, which question you want to go to next?
So before we hop in, Honor, I saw you flagged one, and I'd love to hop into that next. One question I just want to highlight is somebody did ask, Daniel asked, can we touch briefly on Act 3? And I was deciding whether or not to talk about fulfillment or to talk about engaging with your backers, after the campaign is over, as you're doing fulfillment, and then in that sort of dead space between maybe your next campaign. The latter felt maybe a bit more compelling at the moment. So how do you engage with your creators after your backers after the campaign is over, during fulfillment, and then in that space where there's not maybe something happening?
I believe, and the panel can correct me if I'm wrong, if Kickstarter and crowdfunding is going to be your primary distribution method, if you're going outside of the direct market and everything else, then the end of your campaign starts the new marketing cycle of building and maintaining that crowd that you created and not treating them as if, okay, I got your money and now I'm not going to talk to you anymore until I want more money. So whatever you did to engage them and get their interest before, whether it was sharing articles or sharing artwork or just sharing your perspectives on other books that are coming out, maintaining that kind of communication is the key to kind of making sure that your backers feel that kind of connection with you, so that when you're ready to start a new campaign, they're instantly on board because you're not a campaign that they're backing, you're one of their people now. So now they, you're the one they have to support because they hear from you and they talk to you like every week or every month.
I mean, the
I
novelty.
think that's. Go ahead, Rylend.
The novelty of this whole thing is that you're making the book together, right? I mean, your book would not exist without your backers. They have brought it to life, and they are a member of the team now. And so just including them in the process. I was about to say making them feel like they're part of the process, but they are a part of the process. And if you want your book to be successful and you want to come back for issue 2, you want to come back with the next campaign, you need to make them part of the process. And so there are always updates. Hey, just got my stretch goal print back from the printer. What do you guys think of this? Hey, we're weighing options. What do you think of this cover stock versus this cover stock? All of those things. Hey, I just popped on this podcast and talked about the book a little bit. There's some interesting info here. Why don't you check it out? All of those things, just keeping the conversation going, keeping them a part of the process. The worst thing you can do is just crawl into a hole and disappear. That's the worst thing. And then the cardinal sin is you tell them, hey, this book is going to be out in, this is going to be printed and fulfilled in April. And it is okay to miss your fulfillment date as long as you communicate with them. Okay. As long as you come on and say, hey guys, I'm so sorry. We had a hiccup with the printer, or the artist had a death in the family and he was down for 2 weeks. So as they will forgive absolutely anything as long as you keep them informed and in the loop. If you disappear, they will come for you, and they are right to do so. So just keep everybody updated, keep everybody involved, and you will have happy backers who will return again and again and again. Just do right by everybody.
I want to second all of that.
Go ahead.
And just say, I'm sorry, Adam, just quickly. The way that we encourage people to think about Kickstarter is it's not transactional. You're inviting your backers to join you on a creative journey. So bring them along, take them along during and far after. And then, yeah, as Rylend was saying, Kickstarter backers are extremely generous and forgiving so long as you are transparent. Don't ghost. Twitter sucks. They will find you and everyone will feel really bad. Just communicate what's happening.
Yeah.
Sorry, Adam, go ahead.
Absolutely. Honor, there was a question you flagged here. You want to hop in with that?
Sure. Yeah, so I think the question, oh, now I have to scroll, there's so many. What's a piece of advice you can offer someone brand new to crowdfunding? So I have 3. I have probably 700, but I'll say 3. If you have a day job, take the day off of work for your first day. Don't try to do both things because you will just be refreshing the page. Look before you launch at your campaign image. Look in your category, look in the like highlights pages and the most popular pages at the other images of other campaigns that are doing well, and look at maybe why that is, how yours would sit in there. Maybe go for something that is really full color, beautiful, still representative of your campaign, but look for something that in those emails that Kickstarter sends where they publicize other people's campaigns, make sure yours will really pop out. I think I got a lot of traffic because my header image it's beautifully colored by DC Alonso, like it stands out. So that's a big one that I think a lot of people maybe don't think of when they're starting. And finally, I think everyone's kind of been touching on this a lot. I
was just saying, don't cover your project image with a lot of words. People love to do like funded in 20 minutes, bigger than the illustration. Like, you're artists, people want to see your illustrations.
Yeah, definitely like right center the artwork. And I think everyone's kind of been talking about this, but you're, as a campaign and as somebody who's running a campaign, you are a human being to these people. You're also, you know, the creator of something that they want, and that's pretty cool. I love hearing personal things. I love when updates are kind of casual from people that I'm backing, when I feel like I kind of have a view into their life. And I also love, you know, when you're going along in a campaign and there are new things added and surprises. So like as an example, my campaign did a lot better than I thought it would early on. So I started thinking of, all right, like what are fun things I can add in days 5 through 28 that will keep people excited and keep people kind of happy as they're on this ride with me. I reached out, you know, I have a historical fiction book. So look at your book and say, what makes my book different from everything else that's out there? And what are kind of tie-ins that I can do here? So, you know, it's about the Celts. I worked with somebody who makes torques, so like the necklaces that they all wore, and that was one of our rewards. And I think things like that kind of make it stand out. They're really cool. I always, you know, they're great, crafty Celts. I also reached out to an archaeologist whose YouTube channel that I loved. You know, kind of Rylend's been talking a lot about building a community and an ecosystem. And while you should also try to get yourself into the ecosystem of comics and give back as much as you get, think about the other ecosystems that exist kind of relative to your book. So I reached out to an archaeologist and he wrote a foreword for my book. That's, you know, his kind of bread and butter is ancient Britain and, you know, Roman Britain. And that was so cool. So think about kind of the other creative things and the other communities that like you can bring into your campaign too, alongside comics.
Why? I think one thing I like about what you said there, Honor, is for the Kill Journal, it's a story about survivors of slasher attacks getting together and hunting slashers. So I actually had a custom slasher mask built that people could back, right in the vein of your necklace. And what I did, I even gave away one free as a pre-launch reward. So anybody who signed up to be notified, I took all those emails, did a random number generator and picked somebody, they got one for free, and then they were also part of the rewards. But it was something cool, like you're saying, that gave something to talk about besides the comic. And not that comics aren't why they're there, but it makes your campaign really stand out. And, you know, I ended up selling, you know, like around 23, 24 of these masks, which are kind of expensive, but these custom things. But it elevated the campaign to a new height, right? Because you had something special that was fun to talk about. And there is so much competition. Like I hear all the time from my backers talking about the books, like, oh yeah, I wanted to back this one that so-and-so had, but I've already backed 4 this month, you know? And so like, but having that thing that's like, oh dude, I went with that one. I also did the Kill Journal with a leather bound cover that was etched and it had all these gold inlaid in it. And that really made a difference because it was a premium experience that was really fun to get on the ride for. And I appreciate that you said that, Honor. What a cool thing that you did. Those that offer that thing that makes it like, and then you got the thing once again, you can't get at your LCS.
Well, Adam, I think you're absolutely right, but I want to tie that into something that Honor said in the beginning about budgets and things that we were talking about in terms of like fulfillment, because as the rewards get more and more exotic, then the price per unit in terms of your budget goes up and up and up. And you want to make sure that you don't have a successful campaign that loses you money, because you've actually built up so many things in the campaign. Then when you figure in manufacturing, shipping, customs, packaging, and then you realize my campaign was hugely successful and now I lost all my money.
No, I agree with you. I mean, I ran through the whole thing. I have a printer in China. I ran through the specs on it in advance, got a per cost at like estimating, say, hey, at a 500 or 1,000 print run. And I always over order because I plan to keep them in a Shopify store afterwards. And so I could base that and run, you know, some different scenarios and estimates in Excel, like you're an accountant saying, hey, listen, this book is $5, you know, a copy to print. If I do 1,000 of them, I need this many backers, and you have to run the spec. And I have this artist I know who kind of owes me a favor that can get this mask mold built, and I can get this number. But yeah, well, I agree. Jumping into that without running your numbers is bad. that's just bad business, right?
Well,
It's not fair,
I mean, it works both ways too. I mean, it's like you can lose money on premium items like that,
sure.
but you can blow a lot of opportunity by not having enough in your shop. You can, I've done a lot of looking at campaigns, and you'll see campaigns that, some people will do, okay, well, this is my comic and this is the one cover and I'm going to sell this comic, and I may get 300 backers, but I may end up with, $3,500. The Jump, I had 4 different covers. I had my regular cover and I had 3 variant covers. I had books that were signed and books that weren't. I had experiences. And so as I built out my shop, I was able to have the same number of backers as that $3,500 campaign, but I ended up with over $15,000 because there were items and experiences that people were interested in. The collecting market is crazy and rabid. So people wanted the variant covers, and again, they were exclusive to Kickstarter. So the jump will see a comic shop at some point in its life, but the covers that were on Kickstarter, you'll only ever be able to get them on Kickstarter. So when hopefully in a couple of years Image releases the Jump, it's going to be a different cover, and somebody's going to have a really unique collectible that was available for a minute on Kickstarter. And so I think that it's a balance. I mean, I think that you have to populate it. I mean, the other thing I do is that, I mean, Kickstarter is a grand stage. I am putting my work in front of a lot of people. So, and the amazing thing is that they've just added add-ons, right? And so
good. Thank you, Oriana. It's so
yeah.
good that you added those.
It was all me, for sure.
Yeah.
And so when the Jump goes live again, in late March, it is not just an opportunity for me to sell the Jump issue 2 and the Jump issue 1. They'll be able to get Aberrant and Banjax and the Peacekeepers. They can order individual issues as add-ons. They can get a catch-up tier from me where they can get a copy of with one single pledge. They can get a signed copy of everything I've ever written. Whether it was in a comic shop or on Kickstarter. So it's like it is just an opportunity to bring your wares to an audience. And so, yeah, the Jump number 2 is an event, but how else can I take advantage of that event? And just, I mean, more than anything, it's like I've created these books that I think are pretty damn good, right? And I want to get them in people's hands. So this is another great opportunity. It's like you said, Kamal, it's like there are no cons now, right? I used to do a lot of cons, and I'm pretty good at a con table. I don't have that anymore. What I have is I have Kickstarter, and it's wonderful. And so if I'm gonna get somebody's attention for a minute, I'm gonna put as much quality stuff in front of them as possible.
Okay, then I'm going to throw a curveball in here because it's not a question that's actually on the list. A lot of us have said we've gotten a lot of success from Kickstarter, and some of us fell into it because there was no cons. Eventually, cons will come back. The question is, will you go back to cons in the same way, or will you actually shift a certain amount of just the limited amount of time and effort you have, keep it in Kickstarter because the Kickstarter was so successful? Or will you kind of try to migrate that back to cons?
Now, don't you think that like the coolest thing is like now our next campaign that we do can have something exclusive that happens at whatever con, right? You can tie them together. So there's a bit of a marriage experience. I'm really hopeful for this when we get back to these live cons, right? Is that you can fulfill at cons. You can offer something like, hey guys, if you backed, you can get this print if you meet me at Comic-Con New York or LA, or sorry, San Diego or wherever. And there's some way like to tie it together so you become a part of the atmosphere and the of comics. I think it's really, hopefully you can get them to talk to each other.
Honor, what do you think?
I mean, as I've never had the chance to table, and 2020 was going to be my year, and then it happened. I mean, I'm so excited to go. I don't know that this will quite replace it. I have made so many friends online, to get mushy for a second, with other creators, like JL Johnson in the Ennead campaign, and Blake Undying, and we've all talked about like, let's get a table together. We're so excited, like when everything reopens, and they're starting to book shows for like 2022. So I do. I think I will always use Kickstarter probably as a place to get things moving and started and find even more people. I was able to find audiences in England and Norway and Mexico and places I can't go through Kickstarter, and I think it's really special that way. But there's still probably nothing quite like sitting at a table with your book.
I would say the opposite. I mean, cons are wonderful. No,
You know better than me. Yeah, I'm totally romanticizing it.
I'm not trying to step on what you were saying. I just for me, it's like, look, cons are a grind. I mean, I love it, and there's something magical about meeting fans in person or making a new fan in person. But it's a grind. And here's the thing: it's like people go to cons, and particularly San Diego Comic-Con. It's like people are not at San Diego Comic-Con to buy comics. They're there to like see the trailer from the Avengers movie that's going to come out in a year. They're there to camp out outside Hall H. They're there to they're there to get Lou Ferrigno's autograph. And it is so hard. It's like people walk by your table and they are desperate to walk right by, and you gotta try to disrupt what they're doing and try and rope them in. It's such like I feel like a con man. Kickstarter is this place where there are just thousands of people that are there to buy comics, and they are excited about it. That's what they're there to do. That's what they want to do. And it's wonderful. I mean, it's like it's so much. I don't want to say it's easy, because it's not easy to run one of these campaigns, but it's just so fulfilling. It's like, it's not as in terms of getting something for what you put in, it is unrivaled. And we were talking about this on offline. It's like there is a very real argument to be made that for creators now, Kickstarter is a much better situation than releasing comics in comic shops. I mean, I've been there. Yeah, I mean, I've been way better. I've been there. I've done that. It is so hard to make money as a creator releasing books in comic shops. I mean, I have books that have won major awards, and you maybe make a few dollars off of them, and that's not the case. I mean, if there is there is money to be made for a creator on Kickstarter. The fans that you make on Kickstarter become lifelong fans, and they are enthusiastic, and they will show up for you no matter what you do. And you just can't find that. You don't find that at cons. You don't find that at comic shops. I mean, you need to do those things, and they are wonderful in their own ways. But Kickstarter is, I mean, it's just every year, every day, it's going to become a more important part of this game.
I agree with this, Rylend, a great deal. I just did a game. I did games and comics, and I set a Discord up. And the game just launched in December, and now there's 200 people, and we talk every day. And there is like an intimacy that you said there, that like it's real and it's tangible in that way. And there because of these great technologies and people's now habit of being online, you can interface with all these people that you can never hit any other way. And I think it is the only way. Because I agree, getting them in comic shops, it's like you will never make $1. You just can't do it. The machine isn't built that way. I couldn't second what you're saying more.
All right, Eric. This group could probably talk for a couple more hours, but
I think everybody, if I think I heard in the panelist chat that we might be down for a few more minutes. So there's one common theme that I'm seeing both from Michael on Facebook and several people, and it has to do sort of with two levels. One being, what are some successful milestones that or certain rewards that have been successful? And with that, is there anything particular that keeps people engaged and excited throughout the campaign to keep that momentum going?
I will give you a quick statistic. The $25 is by far the most common backer tier on Kickstarter, and $100 tends to be where creators make the most money. That's not to say that if your graphic novel costs $30, you should bring it down to 25. A campaign that is structured around an item, that item will be the most popular tier. But if you're trying to think about if you have flexibility with your pricing, 25 and 100 are really good ones to hit. And I meant to say this earlier, don't disregard digital rewards. Not, I think those physical items, the special ones that Honor and Adam talked about are fabulous, but yeah, not every campaign can bear that. You can make really sweet things like a custom playlist of songs you listened to while you were drawing, or book recommendations for, other things that people might want to read. There are lots of ways to be creative with rewards that will not ruin your life when you get to fulfillment.
Or I really, when I did the 8th, because I had 5 comics done, I said the one thing I want to do is, because updates are sometimes kind of an unfulfilling thing to get, just like, hi guys, here, we're after the printers. So when anybody who backed got a digital issue every month, they got a full comic every month, all the way through the 8 months of it. So they had something, and it was set up in a way, and I wish I had Global Comics at the time, because then because on this Dropbox there was a chat that would go on, and so people would put their comments they liked about this thing or that thing along the way, and it gave something to draw community versus just an update. And I think that, like, when I think about continuing afterwards, being active on your socials and helping promote other people, like when my book ends, the first thing I do is say, hey, here's this creator, she's awesome, you should back her book too, or hey, back this guy, fans, these guys are awesome, I want to throw the love back. But giving people something that can create a conversation, which is, versus something that is, here we are moving on to this sort of the print stage, I think is less exciting. But like, I think Rylend mentioned, like, hey, what do you guys think of blue or yellow for a color? Something that can create an interaction is really key, and digital rewards are a great way to do it.
Yeah, it was one of the things that we actually added in Global Comics very recently, is the ability to actually tie your digital comics that you have on Kickstarter to your crowdfunding campaign. So instead of actually having to worry about PDFs or Dropboxes or any kind of digital rights management like that, you can actually use Global Comics as your digital fulfillment tier, which actually is a very elegant solution to both help you market your crowdfunding campaign beforehand, because you could just link your images to your crowdfunding campaign. It'll take them directly to the campaign once you put up your sample pages. And once the campaign is over, you give them one code that we help you generate for free. And then that book goes out to all of your backers for the digital content. So you don't have to worry about doing that thing with, like, I set up a Dropbox, and because there's a chat right in your Global Comics page, people can do that commenting and have that organic thing going on right in the page where they see all your other digital comics that you have available. So if you're thinking about digital rewards in terms of getting your books out before and after the campaign, Global Comics is definitely something to think about because of all the cool stuff Chris put in there in the last 3 months.
It's rad. It's totally rad. That's major win.
Yeah, and he didn't even pay me to say that. So think about that.
I don't know why. Like, I wish I had. Anyways, when I started that 8 months ago, this didn't exist, and what a better way to create something to talk about and a way to stay connected.
Absolutely. I think we have time for maybe one more question, and then there are literally still around 30 unanswered questions that we're going to have to address after this panel is over. But if you're interested, we will be sending out a survey. So if you'd like to do this again, just let us know. Guys, is there any particular question that has stuck out to you as maybe the way that you want to end this? No pressure.
I'm just putting a couple of resources in the chat that if people want to grab them, which is this incredibly eminently popular 96 reward ideas you haven't thought of. And this is a piece that I just commissioned and actually we just published it this week, how to promote your Kickstarter project once it's live, written by an excellent Kickstarter consultant named Laser Weber. So that I can end with that.
Okay, I want to actually address a question from R. Finn. The question is, any apprehension towards larger entities like Image or Boom pushing their own comics via Kickstarter that take away from smaller titles? And I'm just going to end with what I started with. If you actually have your own crowd, you will get your funding. It's actually, there is a threshold to how many campaigns a particular individual will back. But if people are your fans and in your crowd, they will go directly to your crowdfunding campaign and they will back your book. The fact that Keanu Reeves has a larger crowd than you because Keanu Reeves has been a celebrity for 2 decades, well, he's just using his crowd. You go use your crowd, and if you're trying to use Keanu Reeves' crowd to fund your book, it's not going to work. You have to, if you bring your crowd to crowdfunding, you will get your book backed. If your book, now, the only caveat I will say is, if your book is about the exact same topic, in the exact same genre, in the exact same kind of format as the book that Keanu Reeves put out, well, you will probably have a problem. But if Honor has a historical fantasy book about England, the fact that Keanu Reeves has a book out is irrelevant because those people are not necessarily in the same group. It is the message, not necessarily the medium, that will help people succeed.
Well, and
So it can only kind of, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Honor. Do your
I
thing.
was going to say, I think it's not a zero-sum game, right? It's not, somebody's coming to Kickstarter and they will only buy one comic ever. And damn it, I lost them to Keanu. That campaign brought thousands of people to Kickstarter who were never there before and who might see my book on the Discover page now and go, hey, I like Rome too. I'm gonna take a look at this. I think it's only good for smaller fish as I am when you have more potential eyeballs on your stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, this is a wonderful spot to stop for now. Guys, I can't thank you enough. This was wonderful. All of you bring such a valuable and unique perspective to crowdfunding and comics. And I'm so grateful to be able to be a floating head next to yours. We're going to, for everybody that's still here, we're going to be posting this later on if you'd like to revisit. We'll be answering a handful of the questions that are still unresolved. And please be in touch. There's a lot of resources in the chat. You can join us on Discord. If you have any questions, always reach out, and we will see all of you very soon.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Guys.
Thanks, folks. Appreciate it. Later.